Well, hi, it's Robert Phoenix here, broadcasting to you live on the Sunday night live stream, just a little bit after 8 o'clock in Flyover, also known as Fredericksburg, Texas. We have one person that's just shown up. How is everybody tonight? Hey, there's Judy. Yeah, there she is. What's happening, Judy? Got to get comfortable here with my shirt, my hair. Okay. I still have a bit of vanity attached to this whole human being project. Oh, I don't know if I'm happening, but I'm here and I'm live, and here comes my familiar. He just can't wait to get on the program as he's moving around. How is everybody out there today? Tonight, it's not even daytime anymore. How is everybody? What's happening? We've had a big week over on 15 Minutes of Flame, if you've been following the show. A lot of big topics, heavy subjects, and the last show, the Friday Forecast, we got into some Uranus in Taurus territory, which is about changing the form, changing the human body, and some of the big money interests around that. If you haven't heard that show, I would say go check it out. It's a pretty long, pretty intense, pretty in-depth exploration of the transgender economy. So tonight, of course, we're going to do what we always do. And by the way, I'm about 3/4 of the way done with the big move process. I still have to get the office space up. Sounds like this coming week may even be bigger. Could be. There's a lot going on this week. I mean, we can get into this whole Syria thing tonight if we want to, because it's certainly part of the Mercury retrograde program. We could talk about that. This week is has some legs. Well, Mars is just moving past Saturn, which is good. I'm not a huge fan of the Mars-Saturn conjunction, which we've been going through for a while. Mars, see, there he is. He just can't wait. He's not been around me all day. All day. He's been like hanging out, sort of just being, Actually, you know what happened to him last night? I was a little PO'd at him. He did some things I was not happy with. And so I got on his case about it. Hey, Aline, how you doing? Aline, how you doing? I got on his case last night about doing some things I was not happy with. So I chased him out of one of my bedrooms. He was messing around the closet. And so I took care of, their litter box, right? I mean, this is whatever, it's what we do as humans. So I took the litter, took it out of the closet, and poured it in there, and put the litter container back in the closet. And then I didn't see my cat all night. I thought he was upset because I, was on his case. Turns out that he spent the whole night in the storage closet where I keep my camping supplies and stuff. Hey, what's going on, Emily? So he had a it's like he had a night in the cooler and it was unintentional. I didn't put him there. He put himself there. Anyway, this will probably be, yeah, you can come take them and cats at any time you want, Emily. Anytime. Yeah. So he had and I couldn't find him today. Yeah, I thought he was under the couch. And then I go in to get my toolbox this afternoon. I open up the storage door, and there he is. Like, oh, there you were. Anyway, hi, Jessica. Cats have done other, strange. I'm gonna kind of ramble a little bit, let more people show up. Here's Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. One time we had a cat. He was a great cat. He was a black cat, and I love black cats. And my parents came to visit us in Escondido, and they had this RV. It was one of these ones that they pop up. It's not one of the camper ones. It's like a really deluxe one, and it's called a high-low. So anyway, they were leaving, packing up, and everything. Hey, what's going on? It's Lynn. Hi, Lynn. How are you? Hi, Tanya. Finally learned that the live stream is on. Cool. That's the way it's supposed to work. Technology is our friend. I'm just talking about this cat that I had. He was a character. He's this black cat. So my parents are loading all this stuff. And unbeknownst to them, the cat climbs aboard their high-low trailer and hides out. And of course, the top goes down. And they take off. And they go north. And we keep driving and driving and driving and driving and driving and driving. And finally, they stop driving and they get to Bakersfield. And they stop at a Sam's, whatever it's called, Sam's Club. So they can pull in, pop up the trailer, and go back and have some lunch. And unbeknownst to them, they pop up the trailer, and there's our cat who had traveled all the way from San Diego to Bakersfield in the back of this trailer. So I get a call, and I'm like, your cat has stowed away with us, and he's gone all the way to Bakersfield. So I was working, and they were going to. I said, look, go find him like a pet pet condo or overnight pet place, and drop him off there, and I'll come get him. So they did, and I drove the next day, and I drove all the way from San Diego to Bakersfield with this cat. And when I went there, it was like kind of a, how should I say this? Kind of a ghetto, kind of pet hotel. It was like the Baltic Avenue of pet hotels. And I looked at my cat. He was like, "How did I get here? And can you get me the hell out of here?" So, hi, Brian. So I did. I got him out, and drove him all the way back to Escondido. Cats, they're crazy. Okay, well, why don't we get into what's happening astrologically, since it seems like there's a few of us here tonight. And thanks for showing up, as always. And let me give you kind of a map for tonight. I think we're going to go for maybe a little over an hour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, of course, the chart of the moment. We're going to talk about some of the things that have happened this week astrologically, which I think are really pertinent. Hey, there's Chris and Steve. Genghis says Mew. Genghis is Chris and Steve's cat. So how did I become like this cat guy? I was always into dogs. I was a dog guy. I love dogs. And all of a sudden, I take my son's cat. There's Joe. Cats, not just one cat. Cats. Hi, Joe. So we're going to get into what's happened this week and kind of look at it from the macro level. You know what's really interesting? I wish I had charts. I could just, again, I have not solved the dilemma of having charts here. Well, it'll happen. It'll either happen physically or it'll happen virtually. And so they had about 4 earthquakes in Oklahoma a couple days ago. I think it was yesterday, either yesterday or Saturday, or yesterday or Friday. They had 4 earthquakes. One more cat and I'll be a lesbian. Yeah, thanks, Emily. I know. Maybe I should get a dog just to like keep it honest. What do you think? Like I could solve my man card with a dog, right? That's really funny. So there was a major disturbance in Oklahoma. They had 4 earthquakes, and one was a 4.8. And obviously, we could look to fracking for those problems in Oklahoma. Oklahoma never had earthquakes prior to fracking. And the whole fracking thing really kind of got its legs back when Uranus was in Pisces. And that's when they were using technology to drill down into the earth and shoot liquid Pisces into the earth to what? Extract oil. Okay? So Judy chimes and says, I've several friends felt the strong. So we can trace the crisis around fracking going all the way back to Uranus and Pisces, which was a 7-year run. And again, that's when we're using technology, inserting water, and not just any kind of water, but water that has about 150 different like additives to it. So it's not just being forced down through pressure, but there's actually these add-ons to the water that will essentially um, dissolve the Earth faster. Okay, so this all happened with Uranus and Pisces, and fracking became part of the extraction process, especially here in the United States. Now, today, Donald Trump was crowing about how we are close to being energy independent, and while that may be true, there is a significant risk to our environment. So this is a pretty significant, and we might be at a point where, like, if we stopped fracking today, that we might be able to reverse some of the hazards that have been associated with fracking and have evolved because of the fracking. But I'm not sure, and they're certainly not going to stop fracking. So what we're going to have is we're going to continue to have an environment where the topsoil and then the layers beneath the topsoil in these oil-bearing areas are going to continue to be degraded. And one of the things that people have talked about for a very long time is the potential for the entire Mississippi River basin to completely fracture, right? That's the Madrid fault line. And if these quakes continue in their frequency and also their intensity, that they may actually come in at an angle to the New Madrid fault line. And then the New Madrid fault line would essentially crack the Mississippi River like if you were to take a hammer, a sledgehammer to a bathtub. And then when that would happen is that there would be a massive, an absolute massive swelling of the Mississippi River, and there a real potential for the country to almost be split into two by a much larger body of water. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but people have talked about this now for quite a while. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen with, guess what, Uranus and Taurus. Okay, these are Earth changes when we get into Uranus and Taurus, because Taurus is what? It is the Earth. It is the structure of the Earth. It's the foundation of the Earth. And Uranus is sudden. It is volatile. It is fracturing. So one of the things that we can be looking forward to when Uranus moves into Taurus are Earth changes. I guarantee that right now it's going to happen. We absolutely cannot enter into Uranus and Taurus without understanding this and comprehending this. So one of the things that we saw with Uranus and Aries in terms of fires were not unprecedented fires of unusual heat and unusual intensity. And again, we saw the majority of these fires, the really big fires, happen within the last degrees of Uranus and Aries over the past year, dealing with Santa Rosa and also dealing with Southern California. Of course, now we're going to have the mudslides as a result of that. So we can get a sense, and this is what I've been telling people for a while now, is that when we move into a new sign or a planet that's moving into a new sign, especially the outer planets, we can get a real sense as to what's happening at the final degrees of the sign that it's in, because now it's ingressing into the next sign. And we're starting to get some clues, some hints, some understanding about what will take place when we move into the next sign. So we're looking around, we're starting to see some earthquake action at the final degrees of Uranus and Aries. Keep your eyes on money. One of the things that just happened is that now all of a sudden George Soros is going to get apparently crypto friendly, and he's going to throw down into the blockchain, and just by the mere mention of Soros and the blockchain, magically the blockchains went up. All the four biggies: Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, and Litecoin. They all went up. So again, what are we talking about now? We're talking about money. We're talking about electronic money, and the big whale, George Soros, now wants to get in on the blockchain. So keep your eyes on the cryptos. Keep your eyes on gold. Gold is a hard asset. Gold is a metal, right? We're talking Taurus again. Taurus is hard assets. Even though cryptos are weird, right? They're not really assets. I mean, in a lot of ways, they don't even really exist. If Soros is involved, I'm not. Well, Soros has his fingerprints everywhere, pretty much. He got into Netflix and I got out, to be honest with you. And that's just the way it is. But there are people who are going to piggyback on the cryptos are already in. And I guarantee you, if Soros becomes a whale, then he usually makes money. Okay, that's just how the game works. So we're seeing that now, but gold is also going up as well. And he broke the Bank of England. Exactly, Jessica. That's how he made his money. It was on silver. It was on silver futures. That's how he made his money, and that was a Taurian bet that Soros was involved in. He did break the Bank of England. It's a very interesting kind of echo that's in some ways very similar to what the Rothschilds did and how the Rothschilds made their money too when they found out that the Duke of Wellington had actually beaten Napoleon, and everybody thought Napoleon had won, and they knew that Napoleon hadn't won, and they started to sell their stocks, and then everybody else started to sell their stocks because the Rothschilds were somebody they kept their eye on, and then they kept selling, and then once the market was flooded with sales, and it reached a tipping point, then the Rothschilds with their enormous reserves. Hi, Stefan. With their enormous reserves, went in and bought up all the stocks and wound up owning the English stock market after that. So, there's this interesting kind of correlation between the Rothschilds and Soros. So you look at what's happening in terms of China and the petrodollar and the petro yuan and BRICS and the basket currencies. More money. Yes, absolutely. His choice. Yep, absolutely. Well, right now he's throwing down on the United States. The regime changes. This is where the big money is for Soros, right? The regime changes right here. And when the market goes down, like for instance, when the stock market goes down, which it did this last week, George Soros is like always shorting on the stock market. So, he basically he's making money right and left, hand over foot. Whether things are going up or going down. I mean, that's where he's making his big money. Anyway, keep your eye on gold. Okay, gold is a significant asset moving forward. The Chinese have invested significantly in gold. The Russians have invested significantly in gold, and they're moving away from the petrodollar. Another hard asset to keep your eye on, again, in terms of Taurus, is silver, because silver will almost always piggyback with gold. But silver has a very different capacity and a different value than gold does. Now, I know a lot of you are probably big Cliff High fans and listen to Cliff High and get into the woo and listen to him talk about cryptos and time and all the other stuff. One of the things that Cliff High has talked about is a whole new version of emerging technologies that are going to be powered by what? Silver. Silver will play a significant role in the technologies that are going to be beginning to address themselves, according to Cliff High. Now, if that's true, then of course it's great to hold some silver. And again, what are we talking about with Uranus? We're talking about technology. Uranus is synonymous. Uranus is synonymous with technology. And so if they're using silver for these new emerging technologies that Cliff High is talking about, again, that's Uranus and Taurus. And we're going to see, Brian Tucker says, I'm not into material things. I agree with you. Material things are, but that's not to say, look, I'm into material things that help me. Like right now, I'm using a computer. This is a material thing. And we're communicating, and I'm into it. Or, if I want to go take my kids somewhere, I have a car, whatever. I mean, that's it's not overly material. But even if you're not into material things, that the world itself is engaged in a level of materiality. And so if there's a new wave of technology that's coming vis-a-vis Uranus, and silver is going to be a part of it, then, that's just the way of the world. Taurus is also land and property. This is true. And one of the things that is really interesting. I don't know if you guys follow John Rappaport at all. I think Taurus is feminine Earth. I'm thinking as well. We'll see womb transplants. Yes, absolutely. We're going to get into that. I can talk about that. In fact, I was going to talk about it, but I wanted to talk about what Lynn brought up about land and property. And John Rappaport did a really interesting breakdown with a story about a man in England. And what he did was he defended himself. There were two people that came into his property. One went away, he chased him off. And the other he got into a fight with. I don't know what he did, but he wound up stopping the guy from harming him. This guy's like 78 years old, okay? Stopped him from harming him, harming his wife. And, you know, and he actually wounded him. And this guy winds up going to the hospital, and they arrest the guy whose house it is. They arrest him for assault, even though the person broke into his own home. Okay. And then the guy now died. And what's happened is they're looking at manslaughter charges for the man who was defending himself and defending his wife. So why is that? And John brought up a really, really good point. And the point is that if you define that person's property as theirs, okay, then all of a sudden, when he goes into that property, the person or the transgressor, the trespasser goes into that property, what happens is that if you defend it based on it being your property, then you have rights, okay? You have the right to stop the aggressor, transgressor, okay? I think they did, Tanya. I think they probably freed him. But this is what they're trying to do, and this is what Rappaport was talking about. They're trying to create a scenario where they're defining and redefining property, okay, that the property isn't his, that the property is somehow relegated to the public sphere. And when the guy crossed that line and he stabbed him and he was protecting his property, what the authorities were ultimately framing was, well, that's not your property. And in some way, they're actually right, believe it or not. Because, and here, this gets into metals, right? And apparently, unless you own what's called an alloidial trust, you do not own your property. Okay, so let's say, for instance, you pay off your home and you have a title and a deed on it, right? Excuse me. Theoretically, all you really own is the structure itself. If you're paying property taxes on that on the land, you don't own the property. Okay? You do not own the property. The only time you can own the property is if you pay for your property, and guess what? Gold or silver. Because you're paying for your property with Federal Reserve notes. Wrap your head around that. Just wrap your head around that for a second. Now, if you pay for your property in gold or silver, then you have what's called an alloidial trust. And once you have an alloidial trust, that land is yours. So I would say that they're probably, in this case where this man was being held in jail because he actually, stopped a transgressor and trespasser, that they're beginning to make a case about property not being, privately held anymore. And this gets back into Lynn's question about property. And when we get into Uranus in Taurus, we're talking about, radical reorientation around property and who owns what. Like if you are really into the redistribution of wealth and that whole idea, Uranus and Taurus is, it's like you've been waiting for this day for a very long time, because there's that potential to radically reorient property, wealth, ownership, all that stuff, because Uranus changes the game, right? That's the nature of Uranus. And, this gets into things like Agenda 2030, Agenda 21. These are all Uranus and Taurus, kinds of, ideas and movements. What if one has Uranus unaspected in their chart? Well, I guess you'd call that a free radical now, wouldn't you? I think, unaspected planets are really interesting because sometimes they're called singletons. And singletons can be like people that have unaspected Mercury in their chart are known for brilliance in a lot of ways. Like it's a really interesting kind of element to astrology. So that would be like a Uranus aspect, which means that you could be like really super creative or really ahead of your time, or there's it almost like it pumps the volume of the unaspected planet in a lot of ways because it stands alone, right? So it just depends, like what sign is Uranus in? Is it in Leo? Is it in Virgo? Is it in Libra? What house it's in? I mean, that means something. But generally, when we get an unaspected planet, a very unique element begins to emerge from that planet because it's almost like poor Taurus just wants to be left alone, live normal. Uranus is going to shake. Well, I think so. I think these Taurus people are good. I mean, I have a client, very new client, very interesting story. I read for her. What was it? Thursday, I think. And I'm looking at her chart. She had 5 planets in Aries, and she had 2 planets in Taurus, and she had Mars in Taurus, and she had Sun in Taurus. And it was really weird. I get these almost like Gemini-like readings sometimes, where I get these patterns, total patterns. Jessica, I'll tackle that Uranus Libra 4th house in a minute. But I get these patterns sometimes where I'll get like 3 readings of like this, like different people, but the charts will be really similar over a week. And I'm not planning that at all. It happened this week with these people who were Sun in Aries and Sun in Taurus, late Aries, early Taurus, basically same charts, like mind blowing. 0 Chiron, 1 Chiron, Mars in Taurus, 11 degrees, 11, really trippy, really, really trippy. So I'm looking at this woman who has Sun in Taurus at the top of her chart. And I'm looking at all these Aries planets, Saturn in Aries, Chiron in Aries, True Node in Aries, Mercury in Aries, Venus in Aries. My God, it's like full on Aries, right? And I'm saying, look, you've got all this Aries in the 9th house. I mean, especially Saturn, you're kind of like a teacher. I mean, Saturn in the 9th house has real teaching potential, but Saturn in Aries is very difficult because people who have Saturn in Aries wind up having resistance, a lot of resistance to, maybe their energy or what they want to put forward. Saturn is always pushing back and putting the brakes on. It's kind of like driving with your foot down on the accelerator and the brake simultaneously. Saturn and Aries, or just over the past like couple of weeks, the Saturn-Mars conjunction. That's a challenging one. Anyway, I'm looking at her chart, and so her Sun is 1 Taurus, and her Uranus, where are we now? Like 28, almost 29. So it's conjunct her Sun. And I said, look, you've got changes coming. And I said, big changes. It's going to take place with your work. And I said, but don't worry about it. It's going to free you up. It's going to free you up to be kind of, more invigorated, more creative, more radical, more risk-taking. Like if you're willing to let go and allow the changes to happen, then this could be a great thing for you. But if you're not, if you're entrenched and you see what's going to take place as, kind of a detriment, then it can be difficult. 2 days later, she got fired from her job. And she was ecstatic. She was totally ecstatic because she felt that her gig was holding her back. Like, she was having to stay between these lines. And, she was really trying to be engaged in creating models of conscious communication, the Rosenberg method in the workplace. And I think that sometimes there can be real human elements added to the workplace, and it makes for, better business partners, better employees, better culture. Hewlett Packard was all over this. back in the 1960s, like the late 50s and the 60s, and through the 70s and even in the 80s. I mean, this was the golden years of Hewlett Packard. So they understood the value of process and treating people well. And so they were very, very successful. And then they stopped making money because their products couldn't keep up with what was going on in places like China and Korea and all those places that were developing very quickly in terms of hardware and even on the software side of things. So, but there's a case that one could make that if you have like human elements and human values inside of a structure, that those human elements and values can be very helpful, especially if you treat people like people when you go to do business. And ultimately, that's what she was trying to do, and use this conscious communication, the Rosenberg method, and all that stuff, which I think could be good if it's in the right situation. If there are people who just want to make money and they think it's woo and they think it's bullshit or whatever, especially in business, it's going to be much more difficult. Anyway, what she did is she was, very forceful, very Aries-like, and she kept running up against Saturn, right? Saturn. I did look at Jordan Peterson's chart. We can do Jordan Peterson. So we'll do it next week. He has an interesting chart. He's got Mercury retrograde in his chart. He's a Gemini sun. He's got Libra moon, and he's Gemini sun, Mercury, Gemini retrograde. And you can watch him from his style of communication where he goes back into the conversation and basically retrieves things. Like if you watch him in that Kathy Newman interview, you'll get a clear example of Mercury retrograde in his chart in action, because he's able to go back in time and grab and bring forward and grab and bring forward. He's very, very good at that. He's also good at bringing up statistical analysis and multivariance and all those things, with Mercury retrograde in his chart. Anyway, so Uranus, she had a sunquake with Uranus on her sun. Boom, there it is, freed up. She was thrilled. She was ecstatic. She was like, okay, I'm happy. But it was really funny that we talked about this, and we kind of, and all the earth signs are going to have some Uranian action in a good way, trining or conjuncting. The conjunction isn't bad. It can be sudden. Uranus conjunct the moon. Wow, that'll be a real, shaker, mover, and shaker for people with moon in Taurus. But anyway, the earth signs are going to get a lot of really good traction with Uranus and Taurus. So will the water signs, although Scorpio people might be a bit challenged, especially because the early degrees, we're talking about the Uranian opposition, and all of a sudden the outside forces, because whenever we get into opposition, what are we talking about? We're talking about outside forces. Now, there really is no outside force, to be honest with you, right? It's all one inner game. That's it. It's one inner game. And the outside force is something we identify as outside another, and that's fine. It's an okay way to look at it. But ultimately, it's all part of us, right? It's all part of us. So this is going to be a really interesting time. Now, let's go back into universal income. Will universal income get traction? Well, it's going to have to get traction. I mean, that's the only way they're going to be able to keep people, off the streets, to be honest with you. Because if you look at what's happening economically, stores are closing right and left. I believe Sears and Roebuck is on the ropes, and they're about ready to shutter up, right? JCPenney, not very far behind. Sam's Club closed Walmart closed 60 Walmart locations, including Sam's Clubs. Toys R Us, gone, right? Totally gone. Totally gone. Toys R Us, Memories, everything gone. Babies R Us, gone. Right, that's true. So what we're seeing all these stores, Target, they're closing Target stores. They're shuttering up. And what's going to happen to those people? That's it. Universal basic income, or else TBTB, chemtrail, vaccinate opioid people to death instead of paying cash. That's good. This is what we're looking at, because you'll get your money, you'll get your resources and your income but there will be stipulations, and you'll have to abide by those stipulations. And if you don't have those stipulations, if you don't abide by them, you're not going to get your universal income. Because what's going to happen to, we went from a production economy to a service economy to basically a retail economy, right? And that, Joe brought up microchips, anyone. That's another part of Uranus and Taurus. I hate to say it, but that's true. It is the subcutaneous chipping. And USA Today came out with an article. They just posted it. Whether you like it or not, you're going to be chipped. Okay? That was a USA Today article. And there are some people who are just fine and dandy with the idea of being chipped, And I can guarantee you that they're probably under the age of 40, most of them. But there are a lot of people who will opt out. And if that's the case, and they go into universal income, if this whole thing, something has got to change financially. This is one of the things we're going to have to deal with Uranus and Taurus, whether it's universal income, whatever it is that surrounds assets and money. Something has got to change. Look at the U.S. debt and all the funny money, right? All the fiat currency that we owe. Really, we don't owe anything because that stuff doesn't exist, to be honest with you. But if we play that game, where there's this huge, unending pile of debt that just accrues into infinity that we'll never, ever be able to pay off, at some point, that is going to come due, and it's going to happen. It is going to happen, and the quantitative easing and all the other stuff that they've done, to pump the market, pump the money, give the banks free money essentially, and they can loan each other. That's going to come to a grinding halt at some point. I hate to say it, but it's true. It's true. So there's got to be a change. There's going to be a change coming, and that change is going to be something we're going to have to adapt to. And part of that change, the adaptability is, okay, well, we've crashed the economy. We've got a new model. And guess what this new model is? It's based on this and this and this and this and this. And you're going to get a universal standard income. It'll be based on your age, blah, 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 whatever criterion they have. And then we say, well, here's all the things you have to do. And guess what? One of the things that's going to be really great is, you get to use the chip, and people have commerce through the chip and the whole nine. If you don't get it, then you don't get to participate in universal standard income. But I don't think it's going to be an opt-out. I don't think that if you're going to opt out, then you're going to have to, I think, forcibly kind of opt out. That's what I think. I don't think you're going to say, oh, okay, well, just check this little box right here, and you won't have to worry about the chip. Don't worry about it. No, if you're gonna opt out, you just have to forcibly and use your volition to opt out, which means you're not going to be a part of any kind of society or version of society that has any kind of services. And they may not even allow that to be. We can go into the Uranus and Taurus nightmare if you want. Maybe we should. Then we can get into some, ideas about what could make Uranus and Taurus great. Okay. So why don't we get into the nightmare? Because I like to expose the nightmare first. And we can all kind of deal with our fears and put them on the table. And then we can go to something new, right? The worst first was, let's say you decide to opt out. Let's say everybody on this chat who seems to be of the same mind, body, and spirit, right? Let's say we opt out. We all say, okay, we're going to go to Panama, we're going to go to Texas, or we're going to go to the Ozarks, and we're gonna start our own little community, and we're going to pull our resources together because this person can do this and this person can do this, and that's actually not a bad idea or model for Uranus and Taurus, by the way. I think it's actually a pretty good one, and more people should actually be investing in that model right now. But let's just say, for instance, the powers that be who have a different model and want to herd everybody into that model don't want you to be in that world. They don't want you to develop something that's interesting and innovative and novel on your own, because they never want that. They want everybody to be beholden to whatever it is they're giving them, whether it's a welfare check or universal income or whatever it is, right? Your own right to exist, theoretically. So they're going to have to root you out, right? Let's say you're like way back in the Ozarks somewhere, okay? And you've like planned this out. And trust me, there are people that are already doing this. They're already doing it. Well, guess what? Hey, here's my man, Media Monarchy, recently relocated. What's going on, James? So guess what they're gonna have on their side? They're gonna have AI on their side. You see what they've been doing for the last like 15 years? Have you seen the types of robotics these people have been building? Have you seen the dog that they've been building? Right? I mean, this is where they're moving everything, right? So they've got these dogs and they've got these robotics now where they're totally disconnected from their umbilicus, their servo mechano umbilicus, and they can do a lot of stuff. And give them about 2 or 3 years, right? And that's when they'll like drop them into places like the Ozarks, right? Or drones. Drones will be another application of flying down and rooting out. I mean, excuse me. This is the world that we're going to have to contend with. Oh my God, Sophia just got legs. That's scary. This is the world that we're going to have to contend with. And I'm serious, okay? So worst case scenario is that if we decide like, hey, this ain't no party, this ain't no disco, fooling around, we want to opt out. Well, the powers that be are not going to be real thrilled about that, and they're going to try to root people out in any way, shape, or form as possible. All right? And that includes robot dogs, drones, whatever technology they've been working on during Uranus and Aries. And remember, the Uranus and Aries time is a very big wind-up technologically. Okay? It's a big wind-up. And then what do? They commercialize the Uranus and Aries inventions, and then they bring them into the public sphere. Now they've been perfecting drones now for pretty much since like 2010, 2011. So we're into like maybe the 8th, 9th year of like public drone perfection. But if you notice, drones have not been really fully deployed in society. Oh, the sound is out? What happened to the sound? Sorry. What's going on here? You muffled my mic. It's this guy right here. He's the culprit. He's the culprit right there. He's the one that spent the night in the storage closet last night. I had no idea he was there. No idea. That's Jasper. Jasper the friendly ghost. Anyway, so we've seen some development happen with Uranus and Aries. Uranus and Taurus, it's going to get totally commercialized. They're going to bring it into the commercial space. This is what happened. The last time Uranus was in Aries was the run-up to World War I. They used, World War II. Then they used some of the technology in World War II, and then they brought it home and commercialized it. Like the transistor radio, the electric guitar, television, radar, sonar, plastics, all the major inventions which really defined the 20th century were created in the Uranus and Aries run-up, which ended around 1935 and led into basically World War II. And then all that stuff was commercialized. And then Uranus and Gemini, they perfected it, right? And they blasted it out and tweaked it and all that. So we're going to be going through a very similar phase, and when Uranus goes into Gemini, well, look out, right? What is Gemini? Gemini is like, it's duality, right? It's the double. Wait till Uranus goes into Gemini, 7 years from now. You think things are freaky now? Just wait with Uranus and Gemini. Anything that you could do in nature, they're going to be able to do with Uranus and Gemini. They're going to have the doppelganger, right? they're going to have the synthetic or the technological doppelganger. Okay, so let's get into what I talked about on Friday, which somebody brought up in the chat room, and that is the trans economy. Okay, trans economy. I had a weird Philip K. Dick day yesterday. Yeah, it was. I think it was. Yeah, it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday or Friday. I think it was Friday night. It was Friday night. I had a weird Philip K. Dick day on Friday because I relaunched my. I used to use this intro for Friday Forecast with Philip K. Dick, and I did a remix of it. And then all of a sudden, I watched Radio Free Albemuth, which is on Amazon, it's a cinematic rendition of one of Philip K. Dick's books. And it's actually the story where he sees the young woman with the pink light, and the pink light coming off of the Pisces vesicle, the Pisces fish on her chest, and sends him into an alternate dimension. And that's when he gets the big download. And that's when he talks about at the science fiction symposium in Metz in 1977. So what he talks about is that event where she came to his door, and that became a movie called Radio Free Albemuth. And I actually saw that on, it was a fantastic 19 transition to testosterone a few months ago. Yeah, so let's go back to Friday. Because what I did on Friday is a good friend of mine, Mo, had sent me this piece on basically what I would call the transgender economy. And if you go back and listen to that show, the woman who actually researched that, and I'd known about some of the stuff and some of the players, like I knew about obviously Martine Rothblatt and Bina and all that stuff, and Martine Rothblatt just being out and out, like, Well, I have a theory too, by the way, and I think I'm going to share it tonight. And it's a very controversial theory, very controversial. I may actually lose some readers or listeners or people watching, but it's a pretty controversial theory. I think I'll share it tonight. Anyway, so I went down. I'm looking at this stuff, and it just blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind, because not only were there a small group of people, in almost every single case, men who had transitioned to women. And by the way, the majority of those men happen to be Jewish. I'm sorry, it's just a fact of life. I'm just reading you the facts there, okay? It's just true. I'm not making any kind of anti-Semitic implication at all. I'm just making a notice. I have an idea about that, which I'll share in a minute. But what these guys were doing, guys now women were doing, and did I mention that fact on the show? No, I didn't. In fact, because the idea came to me afterwards, like the connection came to me afterwards, and I'll share with you the connection. But these guys, now women, are so vested. We're talking Jennifer Pritzker, who is transitioned to being a woman. Martine Rothblatt transitioned to being a woman. I think there's another one who and then there's two gay men. So this whole thing is blowing my mind, because not only it's not haphazard. It is not haphazard. No, it's not being the son of a Jewish mother. This thing is so thought out. They have a blueprint and they have a game plan. I mean, this thing is like, they've got a runway. And one of the things that really came out during this really well-searched piece is that when you're a trans person, you are a patient for life, whether it's hormones, upgrades, whatever it is, maintenance, you're a patient for life. So these people were looking at patients for life, and they're like tweaking, they're getting into government, they're getting into medical school, they're training doctors, they're buying new technologies. It was mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing to see the social architecture for what's coming. And not just the social architecture, but the money that's being invested. And these people are not into investing money unless they make money, and huge sums of it, okay? So there are three things that are going on here. With Uranus and Taurus, we're talking about the modification of the human body, right? The body itself. Aries is the head, it's the head. But Taurus represents the whole body in a lot. It's like everything. We're Earth, right? We come into the body. Aries is the application of will. But Taurus is like the first thing. When you take my course, one of the things I talk about in my course is that, you come in, you have your first breath, and everything is automatic, right? It's automatic. If you want to poop, you poop. You want to laugh, you laugh. You want to cry, you cry, whatever. And then somebody's there to, guess what? Change your diaper, do whatever, feed you. It's all automatic. And then when you get into the second house, that automatic changes because you have to become conscious of your bodily functions, right? So one of the first things you do that separates you from your preternatural awareness and the isness that is all things is you have to learn how to toilet train yourself. And this is very specific of the second house. Because when you toilet train, what do you do? Well, you tighten your sphincter. When you tighten your sphincter, you're like, I'm not going to go to bathroom over here or over here. I'm going to go to a designated place. This is very different than Aries in the first house. In Aries in the first house, you just let it go, right? Taurus, second house, you become aware of the body, the entire body. And now you are like thrust into a world of experience and not just, letting it all go. Okay. So with Uranus and Taurus, we're talking about radical changes to the human body, the overall structure of the body. Now, so I thought about this, okay? And again, not from a place of like any kind of, like I had to look at this clearly. I had to ask myself, well, why are the majority of these men who turned women, why are they Jewish? And I had this thought. Here's the thought. That if you look at that community and that group, what have they had to do for almost the entirety of whoever you think they are, right? And there are different theories. You can get into the Khazarian theory. You can get into the Roman theory, the Turk theory. You can get into like whatever, right? But let's just say that this is a group. And throughout time, what have they had to do? They've had to move from town to town, right? Move from town to town. They've been thrown out of places. Guess what else they had to do? They had to change their names, right? They had to change their names. In some cases, they had to change their religion. Going from, oh, well, really, I'm not Jewish. I'm here to convert. And whatever you say, I'm not going to burn at that stake, right? So what we have is we have a collective and generational kind of sense of being rootless cosmopolitans. And identity means nothing on some level, right? Whether it's an assumed name, an assumed religion, an assumed place, whatever that is, it means nothing over time. And there's this kind of collective accrual and momentum on a physical and maybe identity level where that sense of identity gets completely wiped out. And this is the shadow, right? This is the collective shadow that emerges where there is no identity. And you can get into like, the Zohar or Kabbalah. You can go dark on this if you want, right? I mean, you could root around in there and there's probably some traction. But what we really have is we have a group of people over time that have lost their identity. And to some extent, right? Taking on new names, new religions, not even really believing in those religions, new places. And this is the ultimate extension that we're not even a man or a woman, right? So this is a thought that I've had about, this kind of the diaspora of identity. Let's call it the diaspora of identity. And it may not necessarily be true or real, but I thought it was interesting to see this. Say, well, the ultimate extension is that, don't even exist. You're not even a man, you're not even a woman. It's all permeable. It's not just like I'm going to change my name or I'm going to change my religion or I'm going to change my town. Just change it all, right? Anyway, that was my little little insight there. Why don't we get into the chart of the moment, shall we? Let's look at it if you want to. By the way, I'm going to go over one chart tonight. And the chart I'm going to get into, which is, I think, kind of timely, is a natal chart and a solar return chart. So we're going to talk about the solar return and what the solar return means and how some people will, and I've had this. Like, I had a woman pay me to like find like the best solar return for her on the planet, and she didn't care. It's like, I said, well, what if it's in, Kazakhstan? Oh, I don't care. I just want to get the best solar return. So we're going to talk about that tonight. And it's going to be two charts in one. It's going to be the same person. So we're going to look at their natal chart and the solar return chart. In the meantime, why don't we look at the chart of the moment and just kind of check in where everything is. Get back to astro.com. Let me get over here. And I'm just going to, which is what I always do, I wind up changing my birthplace because it's not the true chart of the moment, right? Because my birthplace is in France, and here I'm in Texas. So let's change that. Let's get it in there. And we'll talk some Mercury retrograde too. So here we go. Let's go home, and here we go. Was the chart of the moment. Here we go. Come on now. Come on now. I did this last week. Should happen. Play nice, Astro. Come on. There we go. Okay, so right now, chart of the moment, we're into Scorpio. Scorpio rising. Kind of getting into it tonight. Let's see. We've got that Sun-Mars conjunction. Mars at 12 Capricorn, Saturn at 9 Capricorn, Pluto, and then Moon at 27 Capricorn. So by the time you get up tomorrow, we're going to be starting the week off on an Aquarian moon. How about that? And it is a last quarter moon. So it's not a bad moon to start a Monday off on, right? The Aquarian moon gives you a sense of, esprit de corps and, treating people fairly and, kind of a quirky imagination, quirky insight, quirky emotions, all those things that we associate with Aquarius, not taking things too personally. We like that. And by the time you get up tomorrow, we're going to be out of this Moon Uranus square, which is kind of going on, has been for the last day or so. In fact, it's exact right now, the Moon Uranus square. And Moon Uranus squares, if you have a Moon Uranus square in your chart, that is an interesting aspect because you're really trying to establish your emotional capacity in a unique way. It's like you struggle. It's like Uranus is saying, "Hey, you got to change it up. You've got to be a bit more, freaky or loose or free or whatever." And the Moon will hold on to. The Moon is very sentimental. It doesn't matter what sign it's in. That's the nature of the Moon. It's clingy. That's one of the aspects of it's like a mother to a child. It's, of course, the mother clings to the child, and and a lot of times the child clings to the mother. So when you have a Moon square Uranus, what you're dealing with is new ways to feel, new ways to adapt emotionally, new ways to express yourself, and it's a challenge in a lot of ways because Moon, whatever sign, still tends to be somewhat traditional. It's just the nature of it, right? So if you've got it in your chart, And then what happens is that if you're too stuck, if you're too attached, if you hold on to things too much, that Moon Uranus square just it blows it up all the time. It's really hard. It's like this is like a tool that you were kind of born with, like for non-attachment. It's like, okay, you want to learn about non-attachment. You want to learn about not being sticky icky with your emotions. Here you go. You got a Moon square Uranus. Now the other side of the Moon Uranus square is this at times a tendency to be emotionally shocking. That's another component to it. So that there's always two sides of astrology, right? We're always dealing with duality with astrology, whether it's the potential meaning of an aspect, or what's going on the other side of that sign. So in this case, obviously the other side would be Cancer. So person as Moon in Capricorn has to deal with Cancerian like traits and energies that over the course of time they have to like incorporate into their life, even if there's no other sign, or there's no other planet opposing the Moon. It's just the nature of it, right? So Moon in Capricorn gets humanized by Cancer. Like think of what's his name, Ebenezer Scrooge. That guy's a total Moon in Capricorn person. Am I right? He's flinty. He doesn't give a shit about people. All he cares about is his business. He's cheap. Total Moon in Capricorn guy. So who does he have really strong, like, series of connections with besides the ghosts are the Cratchits, and they're Cancerian. They have a family. They have traditions. They have Christmas. And so what he has to do, and it's only because he has to see his life. He's probably having a Saturn 12th house transit when that happens, because that's when that shit happens. You get to see your life in the Saturn 12th house transit. I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. It's one of my favorite stories, although at the time it wasn't really that fun. But I was going through Saturn in Scorpio back in 2013, and I was having to deal with all those scorpionic decisions in my life for the past 30 years. It was not pretty. It was definitely not pretty, because there was a time in my life where, let's just put it this way, I was like Crowley-esque without the ritual. Okay, do as thou wilt. That was my maxim. That was totally my maxim, even though I really wouldn't have said it that way. But I certainly didn't leave a lot left on the table. Let's put it that way. And a lot of times, unfortunately, not a lot of times, but there were times where it was a detriment to other people. This is what happens when ultimately, we're acting out of our selfishness. And I can clearly say there were times when I was definitely doing that. So part of that Saturn Scorpio transit in my 12th house was me getting to look at that. And it was not pretty. It was not fun, but it was essential. And I remember one day where I was just going through the ringer, just total. I couldn't sleep for like 3 or 4 days. I was going through the ringer. And I wound up going to this diner down the road from my house. And I'm just like trying to get, and everything. I just could not get away from it. My life is like that sometimes. I turn on the TV and I'm trying to get away from something, and there it is. My life is like being beamed back to me. Try that for 3 days straight, or 4 days straight with very little sleep, and you just can't escape it, right? I couldn't escape it. So I wound up going to this diner down the road from my house, and I sat next to this old guy at the counter. I was actually feeling like I was turning a corner. I was doing a lot of praying, a lot of meditating. Like I was getting into some like pretty intense places. So I sat next to this, old guy at the counter. Oh, here's a cool old dude. And, he got 2 meals, one for his, little wife, probably at home. So we started off this conversation very quickly. And he said to me, do you know how they get holy water? I said, no. He looked at me and said, you boil the hell out of it. And I was like, fuck. I couldn't even like escape it at the diner. But it was a really, really powerful time in my life. And it was a very purging time. In a lot of ways, I couldn't do the work now had I not gone through that time. And that's a Saturn 12th house transit. Anyway, I think Ebenezer Scrooge is going through Saturn 12th house transit. But what he had to do, let's just say he had Moon and Cat, because for all intents and purposes, that whether it's Moon or Sun, it's a Christmas story, right? So we're dealing Like if it's 23rd or 24th, which it kind of seems like it is. It's like Christmas Eve, right? That is Capricorn territory. So he had to deal with the other side of the sign, which is Cancer. He had to become more human. He had to become more human. He had to see these people and understand that they had lives and meaning and merit and value and worth. And he was lucky. Ebenezer Scrooge was quite lucky. Not everybody's so lucky. Not everybody has like a second chance or a third chance for redemption. He got it before he was able to, check out or had to check out. That's a gift. The nightmares and the ghosts were a gift to him. So this is the nature of the opposition, the opposite sign. So getting back to Uranus square Saturn, it's one of those things where, again, we're talking about dual meanings. And, this is what happens. It's either acting out, shocking. Well, get out of the shock mode, get into your real emotional body, or the staid and tried and true emotional expression and, conservative and safe. And here comes Uranus, change it up. Anyway, that's kind of where we are now with Uranus Saturn square. Maybe my 12th house revelation was shocking. I don't know. I'm okay. I'm able to talk about most stuff in my life within reason. There are things I can't talk about in my life, though. That may be for somewhere down the line. Let's see, what else do we have? Venus is in Taurus. Speaking of Taurus, Venus is in lovely Taurus. Wouldn't it be great right now if we could all have a little Venus and Taurus in our lives? What would that look like? What would that feel like to you? How would you want to have more Venus and Taurus in your life? Would it be security? Would it be safety? Would it be somebody to snuggle with at the end of the day? Would it be sharing a really good meal with somebody you care about? All the above, a nice massage, somebody who gives a good massage and a good hug. Well, we got Venus and Taurus, and Saturn is right there trining Venus. It's just off by 1 degree. So this is an interesting time with the Saturn-Venus trine. Venus goes retrograde this year, too. We have both Mars and Venus going retrograde. Mars is also in trine with Venus. Those Mars-Venus trines, those are great trines. Masculine, feminine, and Earth. We're talking earthy, right? I mean, that's the nature of it. It's good. I like Mars-Venus trines. If you ever run across somebody whose Venus is conjunct your Mars, or your Venus is conjunct their Mars, congratulations. You may want to keep that person in your life, okay? Because that's a very juicy, very, very juicy aspect to have in terms of, how shall we say, relating with another person. Sometimes it can be a little charged with Mars-Venus conjunctions. It's the nature of it, but there's also, a lot of life force there. It's a lot of life force with Mars-Venus conjunctions between two people, and they can use that. They can use that energy. What else do we have? True Node is right there. It's at 12 degrees Leo, right at the top of the chart as we speak, the chart of the moment here in Austin, Texas. So, it's a good time to be on stage. Hey. So this is, if you weren't listening to me right now, you could go out and, I don't know, jump on a table somewhere, and shake it. I don't know. There's a lot going on in Capricorn. Let's put it that way. And Mars is going to move forward, and it's going to slow down. It's going to start to, the closer it gets to, we have a very long Mars program this summer. And we have that Mars in Aquarius, and it's going to go retrograde. That's going to be kind of a big deal, if you know what I'm saying. Look at that Neptune. It's at 15 degrees. It's right on my south node. Oh, man. If you only knew. Aries. I'm sorry, air. There's no air. There's no air in the chart of the moment right now. We're just talking fire and earth and water. Sometimes I'm when I go to have a cider or something, and I haven't really found my place here yet to do that. But I was at a place on Friday, and I sat down and I started to talk with these two women, but they're both married. just bar talk. And we got onto the subject of astrology. Of course, they want to know what I did. Like, well, they don't live here. They live in a place called Fort Stockton, which is west of here. It's even smaller than this place. So I told them. And of course, it's like, oh, do you know Fort so and so where they have the big telescope? I'm like, I said, no, I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that does the horoscopes. Oh, okay. So anyway, I wound up like looking up their planets on the ephemeris. And this one woman, she was born in January of 1972. So she was an Aquarius. She was born with moon in Capricorn, so balsamic moon. And she thought that she was a rat for the longest time. Oh, I'm born in the year of the rat. Well, technically, she's actually a pig because it's after the first new moon in February that the sign actually changes. So I kind of busted her bubble a little bit. She was okay with it, I think. It had the most fascinating chart. She had like 5 planets in Capricorn and 4 planets in Scorpio. And like not much else. I'm like, whoa, that's intense. So she had these sextiles going on with earth and water, and she had a little smattering of air with that sun, of course, squaring off against some of those Scorpio planets. Fascinating chart. Absolutely fascinating chart. That's a person who could be very self-sufficient. Very, very self-sufficient. She said she was a nurse. I said, you'll be running the hospital in 5 years. Don't worry about it. What else? Yeah, this moon in Aquarius right now will be tomorrow. And that third quarter moon, that third quarter moon is almost like, the full moon is always at this pinnacle or this peak, but the third quarter moon is really when the moon starts like degrading, and the third quarter moon is when you can do a lot of, adaptation, and you can tweak with the third quarter moon. It's like, okay. We just went from the new cycle to the full cycle. Something theoretically was created. And that third quarter moon is like kind of the final phase of being able to tweak or, so third quarter moon people are working on like tweaking issues in their life. I'm not talking about like being tweakers. No, that's not it. No, tweaking meaning that their moon and their emotional expression is about refinement, and it's about adaptability in trying to make things better, sometimes in their lives and sometimes in other people's lives. And it's kind of like that last push, the last quarter moon, so it goes, into the beginning of that balsamic phase. So there's some activity with the third quarter moon is actually quite helpful, quite useful. And tomorrow we've got the moon in Aquarius, third quarter phase, and it'll actually be, I think quite good because it's also a time where you don't take things personally. So if you're going into a work situation tomorrow and you need to be corrected or adapt or do whatever, not take it personally, it's great. You can do the same thing with other people, so this is a really good time to work on some of those issues and, not have people flip out. We will have, let's see, we got, there we go. So the true node just changed. So now the true node is on the other side of the midheaven, which means the south node has just moved into the third house. So over the course of the next couple of days, we're going to have that moon probably by the end of Monday and, sometime Monday night, early Tuesday morning, maybe midday Tuesday, it's going to start to conjunct the south node. And that'll be an interesting kind of element for us in our lives. Because one of the things that Aquarius does is it gets really detached. And the moon in Aquarius is I like it. People in moon in Aquarius are kind of kooky and quirky. I like them. But we also, when the moon goes over the south node in Aquarius, we can also look at, how much have we detached from our own emotional expression, and what is it that we've become used to in our lives, through habits or through our circumstances and our living, because it happens. I mean, if there's nothing happening emotionally in your life, like if you're not involved in a relationship or, what happens, you tend to detach more because that's just the nature. If you stay in that place where, oh, I want a relationship, I want a relationship, I want a relationship, then, it can be very painful or an emotional connection. So most of us either figure out how to detach, or we redirect our attention, or, we get wasted. One of those three things, or we eat a lot of ice cream. But anyway, but the detached part is actually not bad because it's realistic. And then we look at ourselves and, well, I've done a lot of detaching. Look at me, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. But here comes the moon and it hits that south node. It's like, well, what have I detached for? And what is this ever going to change? And, I'll never forget one time when I was going through this trip when I was in my early 20s. And man, I just gone through this rocket ride of spiritual acceleration. It was almost the exact opposite of what I went through with Saturn going through Scorpio. Although the 12th house, although it did happen on the back end of the first time that Saturn did go through my 12th house. But I went through this really intense kind of spiritual acceleration. And I just spent more and more time with myself because I just felt like the rest of the world was not happening. Like my friends were getting high and drunk, and man, I was having different kinds of experiences. So I was fine with. I'd go out, take my camera, take pictures, whatever. I was fine with being myself. But I got to this cul-de-sac, and I'll never forget. I was sitting at this Chinese restaurant one night in Half Moon Bay, eating. I'm sitting there by myself. Everybody else was sitting at their table. I'm like, what am I doing sitting here by myself? It was just one of those interesting moments. Like, that's like the moon crossing the south node in Aquarius. Like, I had this realization, like, what am I doing here? I need to start eating with people again. Life is a trip, right? It's a total trip. Anyway, chart of the moment, Mercury retrograde. I want to talk a little bit about Mercury retrograde because we had a total freaking Mercury retrograde moment with Trump this week. When don't we have Mercury retrograde moments with Trump? That guy flip-flops. It's like he lives up to his chart and his sign like nobody else I've ever seen. Anyway. So apparently he got into a big pissing match with this guy Dunford, who's a Marine general. And Trump demanded that we get out of Syria. Okay, that nothing good has come out of it. And if you go back and look at Trump's tweets around Syria, he's never been really all that thrilled about Syria being there. So he got into this pissing match with this guy Dunford. And he said, we're pulling out. And that's when he went to the press. That's when he went to Twitter. He started talking about, we're leaving Syria. We're going to bring him home. And really what had happened is he went up against the military, Aries, right? And he went retrograde on them. And they had to first of all talk him off the cliff, but then secondly, they had to make sure that they could somehow sneak in a nerve gas attack. So Trump could do what? Go back on his decision. Is that not a Mercury retrograde in Aries? And apparently John Kelly almost quit this week. He almost resigned, but apparently that's happened before, but he didn't. I just thought this is an amazing kind of Mercury retrograde moment, especially as it relates to the military, especially as it relates to Trump. And now here's what happened. You see, they kind of blew it because they did this stupid fucking nerve gas attack. Like, why would why would Bashir Assad, who again is winning, right? Why would he they're leaving now. Let me just throw some nerve gas out there and get the rest of the world pissed off at us. Did this before, okay? It's happened before. Goes back to another time, retrograde Mercury when it happened before. And of course, it was like, all right, let's go. Let's hit it with missiles, right? You think it's going to work again? People are waking up. when the president says we're getting out of Syria, and he's really adamant about this, and the next thing you know, he's changing his mind, and boom, there's a gas attack. People are sitting around going, "This is bullshit, total bullshit." See, these people, we're getting to this point where we are waking up. I mean, a lot of us are pretty awake for the most part. Still a lot of fine tuning to do. But when they do stuff like this, you know what it does? Is it pushes those people that are on the fence. It's like right in. Like, oh, thanks for joining. What brought you here? Well, this latest gas attack thing. I just thought something wasn't right about it. I mean, this is what's going to happen. You know what that means? Though, they have to follow up with something very quickly, so that all of a sudden now people are over here. If they do it during Mercury retrograde, it's gonna backfire on them. So bring it on. Bring on anything that they need to do Mercury retrograde, because it's not going to work. It's going to have the opposite effect. More people waking up, just like when David Hogg decided that he was going to go out and become, whatever he's become. The advocate for gun control. What happened? More people joined the NRA thanks to David Hogg. More people went out and bought guns thanks to David Hogg. Now, whether or not you agree with them or believe in them or with them, doesn't matter. That's what happened. Then that's where we are. It's just like, good job, David. Good job. Good job, George Soros and Michael Bloomberg and Steven Spielberg. And good job. Look what you did. You woke more people up. You chased them up. Look, I even went to an NRA website. I did. What's the NRA? I've never been to the NRA website. What's that about? What do people do when they go there? What happens if you join? You get a secret decoder ring? So this is where we are right now. So if something does happen over the course of the next couple of weeks, it goes direct on the 19th, right? So we're like 11 days away. It's going to have the opposite effect. That's the nature of it. I just wanted to show, that was like such a blatant Mercury retrograde, right? Yep. No, we're getting out. Boom. We're staying. Filthy bastards. What about this Skripal thing? My God. Oh my God. I mean, I can barely even keep up now with all these, these petty little international affairs. It's just like, at some point, you just got to prioritize. Do I really want to spend time, trying to like untangle this bullshit that everybody else knows right now that isn't real? I mean, let's either get onto something bigger or onto like, the real prospect of living and breathing and emoting, being real and creative, all those things. Okay, so let's do this. I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to do a chart. And this is I'm going to do two charts. And Madeline, if you are in the chat room, and I know you are, or you have been, maybe not tonight, but I'm going to look at two of your charts tonight. And I have your solar return up. Your solar turn up. I noticed, I just realized like yesterday is that I've been pronouncing turmeric all my life. And I looked at the bottom and I saw there was an R in there. Turmeric. So it's like, we're always learning things. Isn't life great? Okay. So our dear friend Madeline, I wish you could see her charts. Very interesting charts. Her solar return is like way interesting. So Madeline was born on the 16th of April, 1949 in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, which makes her a Virgo rising. And she has Neptune in the first house, 27 degrees Virgo. I do not use equal houses. I like complexity. 27 degrees Virgo ascending, and a large part of her first house dedicated to Libra, although it's also, let's see what we have here. Second house, yeah. It also goes into her second house. So her second house is Libra and Scorpio as well. Neptune in the first house, not on the ascendant, thank God. Having Neptune on the ascendant is a difficult assignment in this lifetime. Lower in the first house, obviously a bit better. Neptune in Libra can be very fuzzy sometimes with relationships early on in life. If you're available, if you're not available, who's available, not available. You have to go through sometimes kind of the social hierarchy thing from top to bottom with Neptune, right? That's just the nature of it. It's the alpha and the omega. You have to sort through some of those things. Sextile to Moon in Sagittarius in the second house. Now we have Moon and Sag coming into play. I'm sorry, third house, and that's emotion, and Moon in Sagittarius is the emotional adventurer, right? It's the optimist. People that have Moon in Sag are very optimistic. However, she does have a Chiron conjunction with her Moon. It's a wide conjunction, 9 degrees, Chiron in the third house. And people of Chiron in the third house have to reconcile how they think. Correct? It's it's the wound. It's the wounded mind in the third house, and so you have to reconcile it. And she's got some pretty decent aspects here. And Chiron in the third house can be very interesting once you figure it out. You can look at things from a lot of different ways. In Sagittarius, we're talking, big picture, maybe seeing things ahead of time before other people see them, sharing with them, and then them just not being ready for it. Now, her Chiron is at 8 degrees, so her chirotic crisis is between the age of 7 and 9. So there would have been some very interesting kinds of insights that she would have had around the age of 7, between 7 to 9, some of which could be maybe a little tricky, especially if there are siblings involved, because we have that Chiron Moon conjunction, and she could play the role of a mother for a sibling. That's potential. That's potential with a Moon Chiron conjunction, or even the relationship with the mother, who is more friend-like in some ways, right? With Moon in the third house, the mother becomes more of a sister, a big sister, because that's the nature of the third house. It's sibling-oriented, and even if she had children, she would possibly take on that role. A mother is the big sister. I mean, there's a strong possibility with that. And then we have the Neptune sextile to the Moon. Now, sextiles are things that you get to experience. You're born into a trine. Sextiles, we get to experience them and learn what they are. So this is quite interesting in terms of the aspect, because it's about deepening things like compassion and intuition and feeling with that Neptune sextile. But it's also kind of creative with Neptune in the first house. There should be some kind of creative potential. It's not always easy with Neptune and the Moon, because we're dealing with energies that are fluidic in a lot of ways, right? The Moon is cyclic and Neptune is tidal. So it's one of those things where creativity can come and go. There will be periods where there might be a real creative kind of push. Other times it might be maybe not as creative, but certainly there's the potential here. She's got a Pluto Moon trine, which is intensity of emotion. Intensity of emotion, the depth of feeling. This is part of a grand trine. She's got 2 kite patterns, which is generally the manifestation of what we call a splay chart. So she has a splay chart. You'll find kite patterns in many splay charts, and they're pretty interesting. She's got trines all over the place. She's got Uranus on the midheaven, sextiling, true node, and all these planets that she has in late degree Aries. So that's also quite interesting. She's an Aries sun, obviously, born on April 16th, and Sun conjunct Venus in the 8th house. I'll bet you Madeline might have had a smoking affair or relationship or two that nobody knew about over the years. That's the nature of Venus in the 8th house. It's the hidden relationship, right? And Sun conjunct Venus, that's fiery. And that's somebody who really can go quite deep with another person. But it's not this is not somebody who'd be superficial in a relationship. To get into that 8th house, you have to cross through Mars and the true node, and then you can connect with somebody with a Sun-Venus conjunction in the 8th house. You would think that, Venus in Aries, it's one of these hot Venuses, like, make it happen, connect, I'm into this, passion, passion, passion. But in the 8th house, it's deeper, it's more scorpionic. You have to go through levels and layers in order to get to that, which is not necessarily a bad thing, to be honest. And unusual relationships and relationships that are behind the scenes, it could really, change and pivot Madeline's life. And Uranus up at the 10th house, this is somebody with Uranus on the midheaven. It's a blessing and a curse, especially in Gemini. Ahead of your time with Uranus on the midheaven. It can be technological, it can be astrological, but it doesn't always bring steady employment. There's a brilliance with Uranus on the midheaven, but having continuity through employment and being in the world, unless you're astrological or technological or really getting into Uranus, it can be difficult, especially with those late degrees of Gemini. What else do we have here? We have Pluto with the Pluto moon trine, part of the grand trine. Pluto with a wide trine to Mars, 6 degrees, intensity. Madeline's got some intensity, right? Pluto moon trine, Mars, Mars Pluto trine in Aries. That is intensity. A lot of intensity here. The 7th house is pretty much open. And this is what I'd call a really 8th house centric chart. And by the way, people who have Venus in the 8th house theoretically live long lives. This is what I've read. The true node is in the 8th house. It's in Aries, so it's individual. And that can be a bit problematic with Neptune and Libra in the 1st house. The south node here is in the 2nd house. And what we know about the true node in the 8th house is that's where you're supposed to use the power of intention. It's not like having the true node in the 2nd house, which is what? Work. Shovel in the ground, shovel in the ground, shovel in the ground. No. True node in the 8th house is energetic. It's other people's money. It's learning how to deal with other people's money, other people's resources. It's also, there's kind of an occult aspect with the true node in the 8th house. You go online and you'll dig into it. What does true node in the 8th house mean? Invariably, you'll run into occult and magic, and that the person in this lifetime gets to kind of wrap their arms around that a little bit, right? What is the power of intention? What is the power of magnetism? That's all true node in the 8th house. Now, I would say, again, from an esoteric and occult perspective, that Madeline's chart would be phenomenal, and I mean phenomenal, to go tantric with. And I don't often talk about this stuff. But this is a tantric chart. And to work with another person, it's not like going into Jack Parsons land, but there's something about, Mars and true node and Venus and the sun, all in the 8th house, and trining Pluto and trining the moon. The one thing we have here you got to watch out for is this square to Jupiter, which might be, I love Jupiter. It's in Aquarius. It's in the 5th house. It's great. So I love Jupiter in the 5th house. It's like fun. Hey, let's party. With Aquarius, it's like, let's party with everybody. There could be a bit much, with the square to Venus and the square to Mars. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing. Learning about limits, getting your hand a little too close to the flame with Jupiter square. The other thing that's going on here is the opposition Neptune to Mars. Now, this is really an important opposition because we get into Neptune-Mars oppositions. They can be really draining, really, really draining. It's like she's got all this great energy going over, in the end of the 7th, 8th, and then here's Neptune in the 1st house, just draining Mars right out of there. And that's because Neptune in the 1st house can be self-sacrificial in Libra. Well, I'll sacrifice. What do you want to do? Well, I really wanted to do this, but we'll do what you want to do. Well, I didn't really want to get married. I really wanted to be on my own for a while and really feel my oats and find my energy. But because, I really felt guilty or beholden or whatever, I'm going to get into my Neptune and I'm going to blend with you. And guess what happens? Just drains not just Mars, but all those other planets there that are conjuncting with Mars. So this is to me, it's very clear, Madeline, that you got to hold on to your energy. No self-sacrifice for the other with Neptune in the 1st. Okay. From me to you. Pluto in the 11th house, deep, intense, transformational groups. Now, Pluto is not terribly aspected. Sometimes you get into Pluto in the 11th house, it's about losing a friend, right? A friend dies, but these are being engaged or involved in group activity that can be very profound. Sometimes you have to leave the group in order to maybe find another one or find one that's closer to your heart with Pluto and Libra. But again, Pluto is not like terribly aspect. In fact, it's actually really well aspected in this chart. Saturn ingressing final degree in Leo. That's an interesting Saturn, right? It's like the final degree, energetic degree. Where's your heart? What's it doing? What are you into? Saturn and Leo can be a bit challenging, because again, it's like Saturn and Aries. Aries is fire. Leo's fire. Saturn sometimes will be, it's like wearing a fire retardant suit. That's Saturn. Wearing asbestos or something like that. But it's a long play with Saturn. So I would say this is a great time for Madeline because number one, Uranus is in her 8th house and it's lighting up Venus and it's going to be lighting up her sun here soon. And it's in trine with Saturn. So this is a really good time, transit-wise, to connect with the flame, right? The inner mounting flame, the flame of life. This is the nature of Saturn. Saturn comes on later in life. Saturn and Leo, the heart begins to open and open and open more and more and more as we get older. It's the nature of it. It's the nature of Saturn, wherever it is. Here comes Uranus in and trining Saturn right now. So this is a really interesting and very positive time, I think, for you, Madeline. And also, the Uranus sextile. This is a great time to get into astrology. I think you know something about astrology, by the way. So I would say go further with it with the Uranus sextile. And speaking of Taurus, she's going to have Uranus on her Mercury the end of May, and that is spontaneous liberation. Hang on to your hats, Madeline. Wow, that's potent, right? It's totally potent. Okay, so let's go over to her solar return chart now. She lives in Las Vegas. So what we do is if you use Astro, a lot of you have your own programs that you use, but basically what you do is you program the city that you're going to be in on your birthday, right? You program it in, and then for Astro Dance, you hit solar return, and it's where the planets are going to be on that day. So you look at Madeline's planets, and she's got Taurus rising and Venus on the first house cusp, just coming out of the 12th. So the idea of the solar return is like it's a map for the coming year, like a template. You're still going to have transits, and if you want to you can get real granular with transits and apply transits to the solar return if you want. That's possible, but it's a map. So everything here is above the horizon, and the true node is down in the 4th house in Leo. And I would say beautify your home. Get into your home, get into your family, invite people over. If you could go to a family reunion this year, I would do it. If you don't go to a family reunion, create your own family reunion. Maybe that's what you want to do, and maybe your family is maybe not your biological family, or maybe it's a mix of your biological family or your extended family. But true node in the 4th house in Leo, it's home. The heart is open. The hearth is open. Focus on those energies throughout 2018, and it won't fail you. Stay close to home. Be creative. Paint. Do all kinds of interesting things, especially with Taurus on the ascendant. Venus and Taurus, people begin to notice you when you have Venus on the angles, especially if it's the 1st house or the 10th house. So, not so much the 7th house, but when Venus is on the angles and the ascendant and the midheaven, you get attention. So this is a year of getting attention in a lot of ways, maybe too much with a Venus-Jupiter opposition. How about that? Let's see, what else do we have here? Jupiter is on the 7th house cusp. That's an opening for relationship and partnership. And in Scorpio, it could be somebody from your past because it's retrograde, somebody from your past coming back into your life. Jupiter retrograde Scorpio. I like the sextile to Pluto. I like the sextile to Mars. That's energy. It's kind of a theme that you have in your own chart as well with the Mars-Pluto trine. Here we go. We've got a Mars-Pluto conjunction. It's not too wide. It's 5 degrees. And guess where it is? 9th house. It's a great year to travel if you want to do some traveling. Very powerful year. You could have some amazing insights if you travel. And the sextile with Jupiter to Mars Pluto is actually quite good. And there can also be some resources coming into your life this year as well through other people, obviously, with Jupiter on the descendants. What's the downside? Well, we have a downside here with Saturn at 3 degrees. Well, Saturn's not really, well, it's squaring Mercury. Saturn Mercury square. So Saturn Mercury squares like are okay if you're working on something. Like if you're working on a book, a Saturn Mercury square actually is not too bad because it forces you to use your mind. Correct? So Mercury in Aries wants to make things happen. Saturn in Capricorn slows it down. So it's not bad for detail work. It is not bad for detail work. Take your time. Take your time. Again, this is all if you're spending your solar return in Las Vegas. It all changes if you move, right? That's the nature of it. If you go to California, let's see, you'd have to go to, I think, Northern California, because it sticks out further. Your Venus would be in the first house completely. Probably about, because your ascendant would be, let's see, probably about 22 degrees. Anyway, yeah, that's right. What else we have here? Let's see. Moon, Uranus conjunction. Sun, Moon is Mars. Sun, Uranus, Moon conjunction. Wow. So this is a new moon. New moon in Taurus. Sun, Uranus conjunction, 12th house. That's an interesting stellium, isn't it? For the year to come. It's a lot of inner work, but it's not placid at all. It's intense. It's electric. There's a lot going on in your life for the entire year. When you have Sun, Uranus, Moon, those are all not bad planets to have. Not bad planets. Here's what I think, though. This is what I'm picking up on. I think one of the things that could happen this year is somebody in your life passing very quickly. Now, I don't normally go into the dark stuff, but clearly, I mean, we got a Uranus square to Pluto, 12th house, so it's like just out of the blue. It could be somebody that you maybe went to college with, or something like that, just like right out of the blue. And those things spark things on the inner. And you may actually have a premonition of that before it takes place, believe it or not. But by and large, you're out there this year, with everything above the horizon. And the only thing that I might suggest is that if you were to want to change your solar return location, is to get the sun closer to the ascendant. Maybe it'd be interesting for you to, go to, again, Northern California, where it's out a bit more. So everything begins to drop down a little bit. No air in your chart for, unless it's the midheaven, which is in Aquarius. And there's no water in your chart, your solar, in your natal chart, Pamela, which is fascinating. I didn't really pick that up. Although with the trines, right, with Moon and Pluto, and the Moon Neptune sextile, it kind of makes up for it a little bit. It's because you're activating the Moon, even though the Moon is in Sagittarius here. Okay, why don't I check back into the old chat room, see what's happening with you people, because we're gonna wrap it up here. How many people we got? I got 51. Yeah, he's back. Here he is. There he is. Jasper is back. I love Amanda. I love the emoji. Look at this guy. Does anybody want to adopt him? Anybody want to rent him? My faith, Bible knowledge, apprehension. There's references to astrology in the Bible, Charles. It's like, look, here's how I see astrology. Like, it's a system and it's a map, right? It's a system and a map. And all systems have they're finite, right? They're totally finite. Oh yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm wrapping her up. Heather. But systems are finite, and what's beyond the system? Well, what's beyond the system is creation. That's what's happening. It's creation. If you ever want to come and rent my cat, anybody want to come to Fredericksburg? So maybe I could do like an Airbnb for cats. What do you think? What could we call it? catastrophe. That's what we could call it. I'm going to get on out here. You got any questions? Anybody have any questions that they want to bring to the table before we unplug? Are we good? I think we're good. All right. So why don't we wrap it up? Let's wrap it up. Madeline, I hope you heard that tonight. If not, I'll send you an email. And what about the new moon in Aries? Oh yeah. Ew, new moon in Aries. Let's see. Any comments? Uranus conjunct Pluto in the second house in Virgo. Well, with Uranus in the second house, you've always got to, you can't work in a conventional fashion with Uranus in the second house. You can't do it. You have to deal with unconventional work, right? And you have to face your fear with Pluto because it's going to be in Virgo. It's going to be about healing. So it's about, facing your fear around resources. Will I make enough? Will I get enough? And go through that. But it's always got to be unconventional. You've got to make money on your own terms with Uranus in the second house. When I started to do the psychic hotline stuff back in the 90s, I had Uranus and Neptune going through my second house. It was great. It's like, oh, here I am, I'm doing an unusual gig. Uranus, technology, phones, the Neptune really picking up on things. The problem with Neptune in my second house is couldn't keep any money during that time. As sure as all kids kept going away. Neptune's tricky. Neptune is a tricky character. Neptune is a tricky character. How do I protect myself? Oh, wow. This is a really good question. I actually feel like I'm protected. I actually feel pretty protected, to be honest with you. I mean, I've done, if you know my other work, right, it's pretty out there. And I've gotten some suspicion, I've caught some suspicion from, yeah, I don't know. I put out, when I do a reading for somebody, I go on full blast. I really just go on full blast. It's like, it just goes and, bang. So I can't really explain the process except for, when I connect with somebody during a reading, it's like, it's up here, right? It's like totally up here. It's like me and the other person, and we're communicating up here. And then it's like here, right? It's here. So, I'm not, so it's, I would say that the dynamic is circulating. It's circulating, When I used to do tarot readings, I'd do like 15 tarot readings in a day. Like I would get high off of doing tarot readings. I used to read tarot on Fisherman's Wharf. In a good day, I'd have like 15 people. It'd be bang, 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 bang. It was great. Totally great. I try to do about 2 to 3 readings a day at the most. I mean, there was a time when I was a monster and I could do like 4 or 5 in a day. I think 2 to 3 is my max now. And I could do it for about 4 or 5 days. And then the weekends, I just have to unplug and then take care of myself. So there's the answer to your question. It's more physical than it is, I think, psychophysical, to be honest with you. All right. Well, why don't we get on out of here? You people who get some sleep and wake up tomorrow with that quirky Aquarian moon. Maybe wear a funny hat to work. Okay. Love you all. Thank you for coming. And I'll be back tomorrow on 15 Minutes of Flame. And we'll be getting back into it. All right. Take good care. Good night, Charles. Take care. Good night, Jessica. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.